They looked me straight in the eye and said it. "We're too busy for your drama, Mom. Handle it yourself." My own children, the ones I raised, sacrificed for, put through college. They couldn't spare an afternoon to help me deal with a family crisis that was tearing me apart. So I did exactly what they told me to do. I handled it myself. I revised my entire will without breathing a word to anyone. And when they showed up 6 months later demanding keys to the lake house like it was already theirs, they found my estate attorney sitting in the living room, briefcase open, documents spread across the coffee table. The looks on their faces, I'll remember that moment for the rest of my life. My name is Barbara, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in Connecticut my whole life, raised 3 children as a single mother after my husband passed when I was 45, and I worked as a school librarian for 33 years before I retired. Before we go any further, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your state or country in the comments. It helps me know I'm not alone in this, and honestly, your support means everything to me. Now, let me take you back to where this all started. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I called my eldest daughter, Jennifer. She's 48, lives in Boston, works in finance, always busy, always. I needed to talk about something serious. My younger sister, Patricia, had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I was devastated. Patricia and I had been close our entire lives. She was only 67, vibrant, full of life just months before. The diagnosis hit like a freight train. "Jennifer, honey, I really need to talk," I said when she finally answered after 3 calls. "It's about Aunt Patricia." "Mom, I'm literally walking into a meeting. Can this wait? It's important. She's very sick and Look, I'll call you this weekend, okay? I really can't do this right now." The line went dead. She hung up on me. I sat there in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, tears already forming. I told myself she was just stressed, work pressure. I'd try my son, Michael. He's 45, lives in New Jersey, works in software development. We'd always had a good relationship. He'd understand. Michael's response was worse. "Mom, you know I love you. But you call about something being wrong every other week. Last month it was your neighbor's tree falling. The month before that, it was your furnace. I have 3 kids, a demanding job, and Rachel is barely speaking to me because I work so much. I can't be your crisis hotline. Michael, this isn't about a tree or a furnace. This is about your aunt. She's dying and I need..." "Then call hospice. Call her doctors. Call literally anyone else. I'm too busy for this drama right now." Handle it yourself. Handle it yourself. Those 3 words echoed in my head long after he hung up. My youngest, Rachel. She's 41, lives in Philadelphia, teaches high school. She didn't even answer my calls. 3 times I tried, 3 times it went to voicemail. I sat in my house that entire day crying, not just about Patricia's diagnosis, though that was crushing enough. I cried because the 3 people I devoted my entire life to couldn't spare 15 minutes to let me share my grief. I thought about all the times I dropped everything for them. When Jennifer's marriage fell apart 8 years ago, who drove to Boston every weekend for 3 months to help with the kids? When Michael lost his job during the recession, who paid his mortgage for 6 months? When Rachel had a mental breakdown during her first year teaching, who took a leave of absence from work to stay with her? Me. Every single time it was me. But apparently, I'd become an inconvenience. My problems were drama. My need for emotional support was too much to ask. Fine. If they wanted me to handle things myself, I'd do exactly that. The next morning, I called my estate attorney, David Morrison. I'd worked with him years ago when my husband died, and I'd kept my will relatively simple since then. Everything split 3 ways among my children. The lake house in Vermont, the one my husband and I had bought 40 years ago and lovingly maintained, where we'd spent every summer with the kids. That was supposed to go to all 3 of them jointly. My savings, my retirement accounts, the house I lived in, all divided equally. "David, I need to schedule an appointment," I told him. "I want to completely revise my will." "Barbara, is everything all right?" His voice carried genuine concern. "Everything's fine. I just need to make some changes, significant changes." We met that Friday. I walked into his office with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't doing this out of spite. At least that's what I told myself. I was doing this because my children had shown me exactly how they valued our relationship. They'd made their priorities crystal clear. "I want to remove my children as primary beneficiaries," I said, laying out my plan. "The lake house goes to Patricia's daughter, Emma. My niece has always loved that place and she actually visits me. She calls just to check in. She brought me soup last winter when I had pneumonia without me even asking. David didn't blink. He'd been an attorney for 30 years and had probably seen worse family situations. And the rest of your estate? I'm setting up charitable trusts. The local library system where I worked for 3 decades, the Cancer Research Foundation treating Patricia, the women's shelter where I volunteer. My retirement accounts can fund scholarships for single mothers going back to school. My house can be sold, and the proceeds split between these organizations. And your children receive $1,000 each. Just enough that they can't claim I forgot about them or that I wasn't of sound mind. I want it absolutely clear that this was intentional. David nodded slowly, making notes. Barbara, I have to ask, are you certain about this? Estate decisions made in emotional distress can sometimes be regretted later. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. They told me to handle it myself, so I am. Over the next 3 weeks, David drafted everything meticulously. We included specific provisions that would make contesting the will nearly impossible. I underwent a cognitive assessment with a psychologist to document that I was of sound mind. We video recorded me explaining my decisions, calm and articulate, making it clear that no one had coerced or manipulated me. This was my choice, made with full awareness and intention. The hardest part wasn't making the decision, it was keeping it secret. Every time Jennifer called with some superficial conversation about her vacation plans, I wanted to scream. Every time Michael sent his obligatory monthly text asking how I was doing, I wanted to tell him exactly how I was doing. Rachel continued to be mostly absent, popping up every few weeks with some excuse about being overwhelmed with work. None of them visited. Not once during those months when Patricia was declining rapidly. I spent countless hours at her bedside, holding her hand, helping with doctor appointments, managing her medications. Emma was there too, my wonderful niece who took time off work to help care for her mother. We cried together, laughed over old memories, and sat in comfortable silence during the hardest days. Patricia passed away in late May, just 8 weeks after her diagnosis. The funeral was on a beautiful Saturday morning. Jennifer showed up late, checking her phone throughout the service. Michael attended but left immediately afterward, claiming he had a soccer game to get to. Rachel came but spent half the reception complaining about her principal. "This must be so hard for you, Mom," Jennifer said, giving me a brief hug. "Losing your sister." I wanted to say, "You know what was hard? Calling you when I found out she was sick and being told I was being dramatic." But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Yes, it is." "Hey, we should talk soon about the lake house," Michael mentioned as he was leaving. Rachel and I were thinking maybe this summer we could all use it more. The kids are getting older and it'd be nice to have that family time. The lake house. Of course, that's what they were thinking about at their aunt's funeral. Not about me grieving the loss of my only sister. Not about how I'd spent the last 2 months watching her die. The property, the inheritance, what they could get. "We'll talk later," I said simply. "Actually, Mom, I've been meaning to bring this up too," Rachel added, suddenly appearing beside Michael. "Now that you're getting older, maybe it makes sense to start talking about your estate planning. You know, just to make sure everything's organized for your peace of mind." My peace of mind. They hadn't cared about my peace of mind when I was falling apart over Patricia's diagnosis. But now that they wanted to secure their inheritance, suddenly my well-being mattered. "Everything's already organized," I told them. "I met with my estate attorney months ago. It's all handled." "Oh, good." Jennifer joined the conversation. "So, the house and the lake property are all set up to transfer smoothly. It's all legally documented. You don't need to worry about any of it." They seemed satisfied with that answer, interpreting my words the way they wanted to. They assumed all handled meant everything was neatly packaged for them to inherit. They had no idea what I'd actually done. Over the summer, their entitlement only grew worse. Jennifer started making plans for renovating the lake house, texting me pictures of modern furniture and asking my opinion. She wasn't asking permission. She was already treating it like her property. "I think we should update the kitchen first," she wrote in a family group chat in July. "Those appliances are from the 90s. Michael, you good with splitting the cost? We can talk about timelines once Mom transfers the deed." Michael responded, "Sounds good." "Mom, what's the process for transferring the property? Do we need to involve lawyers, or can we just handle it at the county office?" Rachel chimed in. "Are we selling Mom's house too, or waiting? Just thinking about timing with the market." I stared at my phone reading these messages in disbelief. They were planning my estate distribution like I was already dead. I was sitting in my living room, very much alive, watching them divvy up my life's work and assets via text message. I didn't respond to the group chat. Instead, I called Emma. "How are you holding up?" I asked. She'd been struggling with her mother's death, and I'd been checking in regularly. "Some days are harder than others," she admitted. "But I'm managing. How about you, Aunt Barbara?" "I'm okay. Listen, I wanted to tell you something. I've made some changes to my estate planning, and the lake house is going to you." There was a long silence. "What? Aunt Barbara, I don't know what to say." "Are you sure? What about Jennifer, Michael, and Rachel?" "I'm completely sure. That house holds memories of your mother, of our summers together. You've always loved it, and you've always respected it. It should go to someone who values it for what it is, not for its market value." "I'm honored, truly. But won't this cause problems with your kids?" "That's my concern, not yours. I just wanted you to know. Don't mention it to anyone yet. When the time comes, you'll receive all the documentation." August rolled into September. The demands from my children intensified. Jennifer wanted to plan a family meeting about my finances. Michael suggested I sell my house and move into a retirement community, freeing up assets. Rachel started sending links to financial advisors who specialize in senior estate transitions. None of them visited. None of them called to ask how I was coping with Patricia's death. Every conversation circled back to money, property, and their expectations. Then came October. I'd spent a quiet Sunday afternoon reading when I heard cars pulling into my driveway. I looked out the window and saw all three of their vehicles. They hadn't told me they were coming. They just showed up, clearly planning an ambush. Before I could even get to the door, they were walking in. Jennifer first, followed by Michael and Rachel. They had papers in their hands, actual printed documents. "Mom, we need to talk," Jennifer announced, barely greeting me. "We've drawn up some paperwork to make things easier." I stood in my own entryway, watching my 3 children walk into my house uninvited, carrying papers they'd prepared without my knowledge or consent. The audacity was breathtaking. "Papers for what exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Michael stepped forward. "Look, Mom, we love you, but we've been talking, and we think it's time to be practical. You're 72. You're alone in this big house. Rachel found a really nice assisted living facility." "I don't need assisted living. I'm perfectly capable." "Let me finish," Michael interrupted. "We're not saying you need it now, but eventually you will. And it makes sense to start planning. These papers would give us power of attorney and allow us to help manage your finances and property. It's for your protection." "My protection?" I repeated. "Or your convenience?" Jennifer's expression hardened. "Don't be difficult about this. We're trying to help you. We've all talked to lawyers." "You've talked to lawyers about my estate without including me in the conversation?" "Because we knew you'd react like this," Rachel said, her voice sharp. "Getting all emotional and defensive. We're your children. We're looking out for you." "Looking out for me? When was the last time any of you looked out for me? When Patricia was dying, where were you? When I called you heartbroken and terrified, what did you tell me?" The room went silent. They clearly hadn't expected me to bring that up. "That was different," Jennifer finally said. "You were being overly dramatic. My sister was dying of cancer. I needed my children, and you told me I was dramatic and to handle it myself, so that's exactly what I did." "What does that mean?" Michael's eyes narrowed. "It means I handled my affairs like you told me to." "Okay, yes, we could have been more supportive during that time," Rachel admitted, though her tone suggested she was just trying to de-escalate. "But this is about your future, about making sure you're taken care of." "I am taken care of. Everything is arranged." "Then it should be easy to sign these papers," said, extending the documents toward me. "They just formalize what we've already been discussing. Transfer the lake house deed to all 3 of us now so we can start managing it properly. Set up joint accounts so we can help with bills. Get out of my house." They froze. "Mom," Michael started, "I said get out. You come into my home uninvited with legal documents you've prepared behind my back, trying to manipulate me into signing over my property and finances. Get out. Now." "You're being completely unreasonable." Jennifer's voice rose. "We're your children. Everything you have should go to us anyway. We're just trying to make the process easier for yourselves. You're trying to make it easier for yourselves, not for me. You don't give a damn about me." "That's not fair," Rachel said. We're busy, but we care about you. You're busy. You're always busy, but never too busy to show up demanding my assets. Now leave before I call the police. They didn't leave immediately. They stood there shocked that I was standing up to them, that I wasn't caving to their pressure. Jennifer looked at Michael, clearly expecting him to take charge and talk sense into me. Michael looked at Rachel, probably hoping she could use her teacher voice to calm the situation. Mom, if you don't cooperate with this, we'll have to take legal action, Jennifer said coldly. We can petition the court to have you declared incompetent. There it was, the threat. The mask had finally dropped completely. This wasn't about my well-being or my care. This was about control. This was about getting their hands on my estate while I was still alive. I walked calmly to my phone. I'm calling the police. You have 30 seconds to leave my property. You're insane, Rachel hissed. We're your family. Family doesn't treat each other like this. Family doesn't show up with legal papers to steal someone's property. Family doesn't threaten their own mother. I started dialing. That's when they finally moved, gathering their papers, throwing angry looks my way. Jennifer stopped at the door. You're going to regret this. We're done trying to help you. When you need us, don't bother calling. I haven't been able to count on calling you for years, I replied. This changes nothing. They left, tires squealing as they drove away. I locked the door behind them, hands shaking, and sat down in my living room. Part of me was terrified. Part of me was exhilarated. I'd stood up to them, finally. But I knew this wasn't over. Jennifer's threat about legal action was real. I immediately called David Morrison. They just tried to ambush me with power of attorney papers, I told him. They threatened to have me declared incompetent. Did you sign anything? His voice was sharp, focused. No, I threw them out, but they're going to escalate. Good, don't sign anything. Don't agree to any meetings with them alone, and document everything. Every text, every call, every interaction. We need a record. Over the next 6 weeks, they tried everything. Jennifer sent certified letters claiming I was a danger to myself. Michael contacted my doctor, trying to get medical records that would support a competency hearing. Rachel showed up at my house twice more, each time with different strategies. First apologetic and manipulative, then angry and accusatory. I documented everything, just like David instructed. I had security cameras installed. I saved every text message, every email, every voicemail. They were building a case against me, but I was building a stronger case showing their harassment and financial motivation. The nastiest part came in early December. Jennifer posted on social media, something she rarely did, with a long emotional message about how worried she was about her declining mother, who was refusing help and making irrational decisions. She painted herself as the devoted daughter, dealing with a difficult, possibly senile parent. Friends and distant relatives started reaching out to me concerned, offering to talk to me about accepting help. The manipulation was sophisticated. They were poisoning the well, creating a narrative where they were the caring children and I was the problem. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated me. They assumed I was a helpless old woman who would eventually crack under pressure. They didn't account for the fact that I'd spent 33 years as a school librarian dealing with difficult teenagers, manipulative parents, and complex administrative politics. I knew how to document, how to build a case, and how to stay 3 steps ahead. In mid-December, Jennifer sent a text to the family group chat. We're coming to the lake house this weekend. We've decided it's time to start using it properly. Mom's clearly not maintaining it. We need the keys. That was it. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. They'd finally made a demand I could use. I responded immediately. The lake house is not available. You are not welcome there. Jennifer, it's our inheritance. Stop being selfish. Michael. We're coming whether you like it or not. We deserve access to that property. Rachel, you can't keep us out of our own future. We're all beneficiaries. I didn't respond. Instead, I called David. They're planning to show up at the lake house this Saturday. They think they have rights to it. Perfect, David said. I'll be there. Let's finally settle this. Saturday morning came. I drove to the lake house early, my heart pounding. David arrived shortly after, briefcase in hand. We set up in the living room, the same living room where my husband and I had watched our children grow up during summer vacations, where we'd played board games and roasted marshmallows and created the kind of memories that were supposed to mean something. We waited. David reviewed documents while I made coffee, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Around 11 o'clock, we heard vehicles approaching. All 3 of them had come, just as I expected. Jennifer's SUV, Michael's truck, Rachel's sedan. They'd brought their families, too. I could see grandchildren in the vehicles. They had assumed this would be a celebration, a family weekend at the lake house. They probably planned to change the locks after this visit, maybe even start moving furniture out. I watched through the window as they got out, laughing, carrying bags and coolers. Jennifer was already on her phone, probably photographing the house for her renovation plans. Michael was pointing at the dock, talking to his teenage son. Rachel was unloading what looked like enough groceries for a week. They walked up to the front door. Jennifer tried her key, an old copy I'd forgotten she had from years ago. It didn't work. I'd changed the locks months ago, right after my meeting with David. She knocked, confused, then knocked again, louder. "Mom, are you in there?" I opened the door. The expression on her face when she saw David sitting there in his suit, briefcase open, legal documents spread across the coffee table. I'll treasure that moment forever. "What's he doing here?" Jennifer demanded. "Barbara asked me to be present," David said calmly. "Please come in. We have some things to discuss." They filed in slowly, confusion turning to suspicion. Michael's wife stayed outside with the kids, sensing this wasn't going to be the family weekend they'd planned. If you're still watching, make sure to subscribe to this channel. You won't believe what happened next. My children stood in the lake house living room staring at the documents spread across the coffee table. David remained seated, professional and composed. I stood by the fireplace, my hands clasped in front of me to keep them from trembling. "What is this?" Michael asked, his voice tight. "This is your mother's revised estate plan," David said. "She asked me to review it with all of you today, given your recent demands regarding her property." "Revised?" Jennifer's face went pale. "When?" "I revised my entire will in March," I said quietly. "Right after you all told me to handle my problems myself, so I did." Rachel looked between David and me. "What are you talking about? March was months ago. You never said anything. I didn't need to say anything. You made it very clear that my concerns weren't important to you. You were too busy for my drama, so I handled my affairs quietly and legally without burdening you with the details." David opened a folder and pulled out documents. "I'll get straight to the point. Barbara has removed all three of you as primary beneficiaries of her estate. The lake house has been designated to go to Emma Patterson, her niece. The remainder of the estate, including Barbara's primary residence and financial assets, will be distributed to various charitable organizations and trusts." The silence was deafening. Jennifer grabbed the edge of the coffee table like she might fall. "You're giving the lake house to Emma? Our lake house?" "It was never your lake house," I said firmly. "It was mine and your father's. We bought it. We maintained it. We paid for it. The fact that you summered here as children doesn't make it yours." "This is insane," Michael's voice rose. "You can't cut us out of your will because we were busy when you called about Aunt Patricia." "This isn't about one phone call," I shot back. "This is about years of being treated like an inconvenience. This is about you telling me I was dramatic when my sister was dying. This is about you showing up here demanding keys to a property you don't own. This is about you trying to force me to sign power of attorney papers so you could control my money while I'm still alive." "We were trying to help you," Rachel shouted. "Help me? You were trying to help yourselves. Every conversation for the past year has been about my estate, my property, what you'll inherit. Not once did any of you call just to see how I was doing. Not once did any of you visit just to spend time with me. Everything was about what you could get." Jennifer turned to David. "This won't hold up in court. She's clearly not of sound mind. We'll contest it." David didn't even blink. I anticipated that argument. Barbara underwent a full cognitive evaluation by a licensed psychologist. She scored exceptionally well. We also have video documentation of her explaining her decisions clearly and rationally. Additionally, I have detailed records of your attempts to coerce her, including the power of attorney incident and your social media posts questioning her competency. Michael's face turned red. "So that's it? You're punishing us because we didn't drop everything whenever you had a crisis?" "You're still not listening," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself and honoring people who actually care about me. Emma was there for Patricia. She's been there for me. The charities I'm supporting meant something to me and your father. These are my choices, made with a clear mind and a full heart." "What about us?" Rachel asked, tears forming. "We're your children. We raised families, we have expenses. We were counting on my death?" I interrupted. "You were counting on me dying so you could cash in? Do you hear yourselves? You're not mourning the relationship we've lost. You're mourning the inheritance." David pulled out another document. "Each of you will receive exactly $1,000 from Barbara's estate. That's enough to prevent you from claiming she forgot you or that the will was executed in error. It's a deliberate, documented decision. Jennifer laughed bitterly. $1,000? After everything? After everything? I repeated. Let me tell you about everything. Everything is that I paid for your education. Everything is that I took care of you through every crisis. Everything is 30 years of birthdays and holidays and sacrifices. And what did I get in return? Being told I'm too dramatic. Being ignored. Being treated like an ATM with a pulse. This is revenge, Michael said flatly. You're a vindictive, bitter old woman. Maybe I am, I acknowledged. Or maybe I'm just someone who finally learned that blood doesn't obligate me to tolerate being treated like garbage. You taught me that lesson. You taught me that being busy is more important than being kind. That phone calls are interruptions instead of connections. That your mother's grief is drama, but your inheritance demands are reasonable. David stood up, collecting his documents. This meeting is concluded. The will is legal, filed, and ironclad. Barbara is of sound mind and body, and she has every right to distribute her estate as she sees fit. I'd advise against any legal challenges. They'll be expensive and unsuccessful, and they'll only further damage your relationship with your mother. What relationship? Jennifer spat. She just destroyed any relationship we had. No, I said softly. You destroyed it months ago. You just didn't notice because you weren't paying attention. You never paid attention unless you wanted something from me. They started to leave, Michael grabbing Rachel's arm, Jennifer walking out first with her head high, trying to maintain some dignity. At the door, Rachel turned back. Was it worth it, losing your children over money? I didn't lose my children over money, I replied. I lost my children long before that. I just finally stopped pretending I hadn't. They left. The door closed. The house fell silent. David and I stood there for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling around us. Are you all right? David asked gently. I nodded, wiping tears I hadn't realized had fallen. I am. For the first time in a long time, I actually am. David packed up his briefcase, giving me a moment to compose myself. You did the right thing, Barbara. I've seen many estate disputes in my career, but I've rarely seen someone handle it with as much dignity as you just did. I don't feel dignified, I admitted. I feel exhausted. That's normal, but you stood your ground. You protected yourself. That takes courage. He handed me a card. If they contact you, and they probably will, don't engage alone. Call me first, document everything, and remember you don't owe them explanations or apologies. After David left, I sat in the living room for a long time looking at the lake through the window. This house held so many memories. My husband teaching the kids to fish off the dock, summer barbecues, late-night conversations on the porch, the sound of children's laughter echoing through the halls. But those children had grown into adults I barely recognized, adults who valued my money more than my presence. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. Aunt Barbara, are you okay? Jennifer just called me screaming about the will. I told her I didn't want to be in the middle of this. I called her back. Don't worry about being in the middle. This is my decision and I stand by it. You've been kind to me. You were there for your mother. The house should go to someone who loves it for the right reasons. I'm honored, truly, but I'm worried about you. Are you safe? Are they harassing you? I'm fine. My attorney is handling everything. How are you doing? I know this must be stressful. We talked for an hour about her mother, about grief, about moving forward. It reminded me what real connection felt like. Not transactional, not conditional, just genuine care between two people who valued each other. The following weeks were quiet. My children didn't reach out. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. They'd shown their true priorities, and now that those priorities were denied, they had no use for me. Part of me grieved that reality. Part of me felt relief. I spent Christmas with Emma and her family. We cooked together, exchanged modest gifts, and watched old movies. It wasn't the big family gathering I'd once imagined for my old age, but it was warm and real and free of ulterior motives. In January, I received a formal letter from Jennifer's attorney threatening to contest the will. David responded with our documentation, the psychological evaluation, the video testimony, the records of their coercion attempts. The challenge was dropped within 2 weeks. They knew they couldn't win. The lake house sits waiting for Emma, maintained and cherished. My estate will fund scholarships and research and support for people who need it. My life feels lighter now, unburdened by the weight of children who saw me as an inheritance rather than a person. I handled it myself. just like they told me to. And in doing so, I reclaimed my dignity, my autonomy, and my peace. Sometimes the hardest part of love is recognizing when it's one-sided and having the courage to stop giving to people who only know how to take. That's my story. Thanks for listening.